He paid in quarters, never said much, just coffee black, no cream. She saw past the worn jacket and quiet eyes, offering warmth without asking for anything in return. Then one day he vanished.
No goodbye, no trace.
Days later, she opened a newspaper, and what she read made her hands tremble. What she thought was a small kindness turned out to be the beginning of something far bigger than she ever imagined. Hit like and comment where you're watching from. Your support brings more amazing stories. Now let's begin. The bell above the door jingled softly, letting in a gust of cold air and the scent of diesel. Emily glanced up from behind the counter, her hand still wiping down a sugar jar. It was barely 7 a.m. and Willow Creek Diner had just started to wake up. The smell of fresh bacon and burnt toast lingered under flickering fluorescent lights, and a half-empty pot of black coffee steamed quietly on the warmer. She saw him right away. Tall, slender, late 50s or early 60s, faded denim jacket, boots covered in dried mud, and a cap that had seen 100 sunrises. He moved slowly, not from weakness, but from years that had taught him not to rush. Without a word, he slid into the last booth by the window, the one facing the highway. Emily walked over with a smile. "Morning, sir. What can I get you?" He didn't even glance at the menu. "Just coffee black, no cream." "Coming right up." She brought the cup and set it down gently, her smile soft but sincere. He nodded once in thanks and stared out the window, watching trucks roll by on the distant highway. No phone, no paper, just silence and steam rising from his mug. 15 minutes passed. He sipped slowly, every so often rubbing the ring finger on his left hand where a tan line hinted a story untold. When he finally stood to leave, he didn't say a word, just placed a small stack of coins on the table, quarters, dimes, a couple nickels, and started toward the door. Emily looked down at the coins, her brow gently furrowed. She knew that look. A long haul with not enough loads. A man riding empty, burning more fuel than he could afford. "Rough week?" she asked softly as he reached the door. He paused, nodded once, then left. Back behind the counter, she picked up the bill and scribbled in the total, but instead of punching it into the register, she wrote in quiet cursive, "Paid by E." The cook raised an eyebrow. Emily didn't explain. Some acts of kindness did not need receipts. The next morning, just as Emily was finishing her second pot of coffee, the doorbell chimed again. The wind carried in more cold, and with it him. Same jacket, same boots, same quiet eyes. He gave a faint nod toward her and walked straight to the same booth. No hesitation, like he already belonged there. Emily didn't wait for him to speak this time. "Coffee black, no cream," she said with a soft smile. He chuckled under his breath, just enough to lift the corners of his mouth, and nodded again. Emily poured the coffee and added something extra this time, a warm biscuit, freshly baked just half an hour ago, wrapped in a small napkin and placed neatly beside the mug. She set it down with care and whispered, "On the house." He looked at the plate, then at her, not with disbelief, but with something softer, as if the gesture reached a place in him that had not been touched in a long time. He did not say thank you, but he did look her in the eye, and that said more. He ate slowly, every bite deliberate, not from hunger, but from a kind of reverence. When he was done, he wiped his fingers with the napkin and folded it neatly. Again, he placed his payment on the table. Quarters mostly, enough for a cup of coffee, maybe less. And again, he left without fanfare. Emily picked up the coins after he left, and held them in her hand for a moment longer than usual. She stared at the folded napkin still on the table. It was spotless, clean, like he wanted to return the small kindness in any way he could. Second day in a row, the cook muttered as he flipped a pancake behind the grill. "That guy your secret admirer?" Emily smiled faintly but did not reply. Something about the man made it feel wrong to turn this into a joke. He was not just a customer. Not anymore. He had become part of her morning rhythm, like the hum of the coffee machine or the jingle of the bell. That evening, Emily sat in the back booth during her break, watching dusk fall over the highway. She thought about him, his silence, his nod, the biscuit. Sometimes the quietest moments held the heaviest weight. She looked out the window, wondering if she would see him again. Day 3 started just like the others. The cold wind blew hard against the diner's frosted windows, and Emily's breath fogged the glass as she propped open the front door with a wooden wedge. The sun was barely up when she heard the bell above the door ring again. And there he was, Same quiet entrance, same steady boots. But this time there was something different in his eyes. Not just tiredness or distance, but something like comfort, like he was starting to feel known. He walked straight to the booth by the window. Emily poured his coffee before he even asked and set it down with a nod. "Morning," she said gently. He nodded back. She didn't add a biscuit this time, only because there was a fresh cinnamon roll waiting on the warmer. She walked away without another word. Later, as the diner began to fill with chatter from regulars and passing truckers, Emily spotted something unusual. The man Hank, though she still didn't know his name, had stood up and was bent over one of the chairs near the counter. The busboy had been struggling with it all week. Its front leg wobbled with every shift of weight. Quietly, Hank grabbed a napkin, folded it precisely, and wedged it under the chair's leg. He pressed down, checked it again, and then nodded with satisfaction. No one had asked him. No one even noticed except Emily. She stood behind the counter, her lips parting slightly. She said nothing, only watched. When he was done, he returned to his seat and finished the last sip of coffee. He left a smaller pile of coins that day, only 3 quarters and something else, a napkin folded in half with a note written in neat, all-capital letters. "Your kindness cost more than $1. Thank you." No name, no flourish, just that. Emily held the napkin gently, as if it might tear from the warmth in her hands. She read it twice, then again. Her throat tightened, but she swallowed it down. She slipped the note into her apron pocket and smiled to herself. As he walked out, she glanced at the window. For the first time, he turned back before the door closed, just for a second, just enough to meet her eyes. And then he was gone again. Day 4 came, but the booth by the window remained empty. Emily poured the morning coffee anyway, just like she always did. She made sure the pot was hot. She wiped down the table twice. She even placed a folded napkin on the corner of the table, half hoping, half believing he would walk through the door at any moment, but the bell never rang for him. The regulars came and went. A few new truckers passed through, ordering pancakes and asking for extra syrup. One of them even sat in his booth. Emily caught herself frowning. She quickly forced a smile instead, then turned away. The napkin stayed in her apron pocket all day. Day 5 came. Still no sign of him. She thought maybe his route changed. Maybe he got called away unexpectedly. Truckers lived unpredictable lives. But still she had a feeling, one that sat heavy in her chest. That night, as snow began to fall lightly over Willow Creek, Emily stayed after her shift, wiping down tables that were already clean and restocking sugar. Containers that were already full. The cook had gone home. The lights were dimmed. She stood near the window, watching headlights disappear into the dark. "You okay, Em?" the busboy asked as he pulled on his coat. She nodded, but her eyes were still on the highway. Just quiet without him here. "Who?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the napkin, the one with the note. She had smoothed it flat and folded it carefully each day. It was starting to feel like something more than just words, like a part of a story that was waiting for its ending. By day 6, the booth was empty again. Emily sat there on her break, sipping her own coffee. No cinnamon roll, no coins, no faint nods or quiet glances. The chair he had fixed still stood perfectly level. She traced the rim of her mug with her finger and whispered aloud to no one, "Hope you're okay, Hank, or whoever you are." She had never even asked his name, but somehow it felt like she had known him longer than most people who passed through those doors. And yet now it was as if he had vanished. Emily walked into Willow Creek Diner on day 7 with the same hope she had carried for 3 days straight, that the door would jingle, and the man in the denim jacket would walk in, nod silently, and sit in his booth like nothing had changed. But instead of a customer waiting, she found the cook already flipping through that morning's newspaper, a smirk on his face. "You're going to want to see this," he said, holding out the paper. Emily wiped her hands on her apron and took it. He tapped a spot halfway down page 12. A tiny classified ad circled in red ink. She read it aloud, barely above a whisper. "To the waitress at Willow Creek Diner, you reminded an old man what kindness looks like. You made me feel seen, so I made a few calls." It was signed Hank W. Below that in bold print, "Free coffee for all truckers all July, paid in full." Emily froze, her lips parted. She reread it, hand trembling slightly. The cook pointed to a tiny, printed image beside the ad. A scanned receipt from HW Transco. showing a $1,000 transfer made directly to the diner's owner. Emily's mind spun. Before she could speak, the owner himself walked out from the back holding a sealed envelope. This came in yesterday's mail. No return address, but I think it's for you. Inside the envelope was a personal check for $500 made out to her name, and something even more touching. A hand-drawn doodle of a steaming coffee mug rising with swirls of warmth written. Underneath in uneven capital letters, "Some roads lead home. Others lead to people like you." Emily blinked quickly, trying to steady herself. She let out a small laugh that caught in her throat. A laugh made of gratitude, disbelief, and something deeper. Connection. She stepped outside during her break, wrapping her arms against the breeze. The wind bit cold against her cheeks, but the sun had broken through the gray. The highway buzzed with life. One by one, semis rolled past. She stood at the edge of the lot, eyes fixed on the road, and whispered, "Hope you're out there, Hank. Coffee's still on me." 2 weeks later, the diner put up a new wooden sign etched carefully and hung above the front door. It read, "Hank's Corner, coffee for truckers free every July." And just like that, a quiet man who paid in quarters had given back something bigger than any check could buy. He reminded a small-town waitress that small kindnesses could stretch across highways and hearts alike.